Hi, my friends, on Tell Me the Stories of Jesus. It's Dr. Abby again this Sunday. And remember, we are on a journey to the promised land, and we are learning about the great God who is taking us on this journey, how we draw closer to Him, and also the do's and don'ts on this journey to the promised land. And today we're studying the book of Exodus, chapter 14. Remember, the children of Israel have left Egypt in an orderly manner. They've left Egypt after God dealt with Pharaoh and all his servants. And so after they went on the journey, and remember, God has his own route, his plan for them to go by. And they got to a place, and God told Moses, said, let them settle camp here, let them rest. And at that time, suddenly Pharaoh and his servants were like, what? Why did we let them go? Who is going to serve us? And he determined that he was going to run after the children of Israel. He gathered all his chariots, all the king's horses, the chariots, the strong men, everybody, time to go after the children of Israel. We can't let them go. Imagine, after all the troubles they've been through, after all the plagues, and the very sad one, where all the firstborn sons, when they died, no, Pharaoh was still going after the children of Israel. He wouldn't let them go. Even though God had said, let my people go, they're going to the promised land, they're going to worship me, a land flowing with milk and honey. That means a land full of beautiful things. But Pharaoh went after them. And the children of Israel, they had camped, they had stayed still. And then, remember, cloud of fire, cloud of the pillar of fire, the pillar of cloud leading them, and they were settled. And suddenly they look back. Pharaoh and his armies were coming. Wow. They were worried. They cried to God. Then they looked at Moses and Aaron, and they were like, what have you brought us to? You should have left us in Egypt. We would have been happy serving them. Imagine, how can you say that? We would have been happy serving them. You want us to die in the wilderness? And they moaned and moaned and moaned. And God just spoke to Moses. God said, you know what, Moses? Just tell them to get up. It's time to move. And God told Moses, stretch out. Yes, and one thing that happened also, there was the Red Sea. It's a big sea, so that's lots of water in front of them. It's called the Red Sea. It was in front of them, and then the Pharaoh and his army behind them. So it was more like they were in a situation where they couldn't escape. There was no way forwards, no way backwards, and it was, literally they were going to die, wasn't it? And so they moaned. They moaned. And God told Moses, tell them to get up. And Moses told them, stand and see the salvation of God. That means stand and see God help you today. The Egyptians you see today, you will see them no more. That was God's promise to the children of Israel. And so they got up. They listened to what Moses was telling them. And God gave Moses the instruction. God told him that rod, remember that rod that Moses used to do different mighty things in Egypt. God told him, stretch it towards the Red Sea. And Moses stretched the rod towards the Red Sea. Guess what happened? A wind started to blow. That was God in action. God blew that wind, and as the wind was blowing, you see that Red Sea, that water in front of the children of Israel, it started to move pathways. It started to move. The water was high, like a wall, and there was dry ground in the middle. Lots of water here, lots of water there, dry ground in the middle. The wind had made the water stand tall, like when waves stand tall, but it remained standing tall, more like two walls for the children of Israel. And they started to move. They and everything that they had, all their belongings, they started to move. And they walked through dry land in the middle of the sea. That's a miracle. Remember, miracle is something we can never explain by science or anything. It's just a great act of God. And it moved for them, and they walked through. And as they walked through, Pharaoh and his army, they started to gallop. on chariots, and they started to follow the children of Israel, even through that parted sea. Yeah? Once God saw that every Israelite had crossed over to the other side, do you know what God did? He sent his angels, and the tires of the chariots started to malfunction. It wouldn't move. They couldn't run. Everything, the chariots, the horses, they were in confusion. And then Pharaoh, the army, they knew they were in trouble. And the army were like, let us run. The God of Israel, he is against us. He's fighting for Israel. But sorry, too late. They couldn't run back in time. By the time everybody had crossed over to the other side, God told Moses, stretch forth that rod again. And he stretched it towards the Red Sea. And the wall and the water started to collapse. And it's a great sea. This is not just a swimming pool. It collapsed on Pharaoh, his chariots, his army, and unfortunately, that was the end of them. They all died. But that was the end of the trouble from the Egyptians, for the Israelites. They were free. They crossed that Red Sea, and they were on the other side. And their enemies that had tortured them for over 400 years, they were no more. That's the end of the story. And they gave thanks to God. If you go into chapter 15, you will see songs that Moses wrote, songs that Miriam wrote to rejoice how God had rescued them. They had crossed the Red Sea in front, Pharaoh behind, but the Lord saw them through. And that brings us to the end of the story today. Remember, you and I, 2025, we're on a journey to our promised land, to that beautiful thing that God wants to do for us. And our lesson today, there are times when you've left something unpleasant behind. You don't want to do it again. You've asked God to, take you out of that thing. And imagine, immediately the Israelites left Egypt, not too long, the Egyptians are after them again. And at times we have that situation in our lives where you've left something and it looks like that thing wants to get hold of you again. So you're going to the promised land and you've made up your mind, I'm not going to be lying again. And then you get into a situation where it looks like it's a lie that will get you out of it. What are you going to do? Are you going to be like the Israelites that will start shouting, oh, I should have been in Egypt, eating and drinking and everything, at least I won't die? No, what do? You look up to God. First, the Israelites did the right thing. They cried to God. But then the next thing they did was wrong. They started to mumble and grumble and moan at Moses and Aaron. Moan at, human beings. No. Anytime it looks like whatever you've left behind, you've said, God, please, I don't want to be poor again and manage my finance, wrongly. Just at that time when you think, yes, I've set everything straight. Now I'm going to be free, and then it looks like there is one big thing that comes and wants to take all your money away. Who do you look up to? You don't start to moan and say, oh, if only mommy had not borrowed my money. If only daddy had not done this. If only da. No, God, save me. Help me. I don't want to go back to Egypt. I don't want the Egyptians to get me. I don't want that thing I've left behind on my way to the promised land. I don't want it to get me. I don't want to go back to that bad thing. God, please help me. Don't start to say, oh, Johnny, you made me lie. Oh, Sophie, you made me, No, God, help me. I don't want to lie again. You've helped me so far. Help me to stop it. Look up to God. They moaned at Moses. Moses did the right thing. He looked up to God. And God told him what to do. So God will then always give you that instruction, what to do. Yeah? He told Moses to stretch the rod. God will tell you, it's just that little thing that maybe you have not taken note of. He's the one that will now tell you, oh, why not do X, Y, Z? And he will take you out of it. So when trouble seems to come on your way to the promised land, what do? You look up to God. You cry to God. Don't moan at man or anyone around you. Even if they seem as the people in authority leading you, tell God, God, teach them what to do to help me to get to the promised land. And then you will see God. He's still a miracle worker. He parted the Red Sea. So no matter who ever knew that could happen. And I don't think, it has happened in that magnitude again. There's another story where they crossed a river. God did that for them. But in that magnitude of the Red Sea, so God will do the unimaginable for you. He will change nature. He will change the natural sequence of things just for you, because you've chosen to trust Him as He leads you to the promised land. And when He does it, remember always to thank Him. Thanksgiving will get you further and further, even as we move to this promised land. That's our lesson for today. But there is one more I want to say, and that's from the aspect of Pharaoh. And I want us to learn a lesson from it. How much do you dislike a person that you lose all your logic, all your reasoning? Why did he go after them after all the things he saw God do for them? He should have known that these people, they are dangerous. They have a God that fights for them so badly. Why did he leave Egypt to run after them? Then you're there, you see sea part for some people. You should know, wow, a mighty God parted the sea. Do you think that God will let you follow through and go and kill them? No, He won't. So, but because they didn't like the Israelites and they wanted them so badly, I don't know if they were a bit lazy. They wanted servants. They didn't think again. They didn't follow logic. We're not meant to dislike people as children of God. But I know once in a while, some people do things that you dislike them. Can you please stop? Pray to God and say, God, I really don't like what this person is doing. It makes me dislike him or her. Just help me in dealing with this person. Don't go to the end that you do wrong things. You make wrong decisions just to get at that person, just to punish that person. If you do that, you won't get to the promised land. Except you stop and repent, retrace your ways and come back to God. You won't. Just leave the person, let the people go. Even God said, let my people go. Leave the person alone. Whether the person is a child of God or not, just leave them and focus on God. And that brings us to the end of our lesson today. Until next week, when we again talk about something that the Israelites did, and we'll learn from it as we all move to the promised land. Till then, bye.